Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. The webinar will start in a few minutes. Hi, folks. We're just going to give folks a few minutes to start, and then we will kick off the webinar. Hi there. Thank you all so much for joining us. We're going to give folks another 1 or 2 minutes to join, and then we'll get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're just going to give folks a few minutes to join, and then we'll get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're just going to give folks another minute or two to join, and then we'll get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I think we're going to give folks 1 more minute, and then we will start the webinar. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is a webinar on the Affordable Housing Special Assessment Program, which is a new property tax incentive for multifamily housing. My name is Emily Bloom-Carlin, and this webinar is being co-hosted by the Preservation Compact, where I work, Community Investment Corporation, and by the Cook County Assessor's Office, who administers this program. So today we're going to do a few things. So first, we'll introduce you to the Preservation Compact, Community Investment Corporation, the Assessor's Office, and I'll give you a little bit of background on the incentive program itself. Then our presenters from the Assessor's Office will provide an in-depth walkthrough of the program and share frequently asked questions about the application process. Finally, we'll leave time for Q&A to make sure that you can get your questions answered. And just some really quick housekeeping notes before I get started. So this presentation is being recorded and a link to the recording will be shared. We'll also share the slides. And finally, please feel free to ask questions at any point during the webinar through the Q&A option on Zoom. So as I said earlier, my name is Emily Bloom-Carlin, and I'm a senior program officer at the Preservation Compact. The Compact is a policy collaborative focused on preserving affordable rental housing, and we work with a wide range of partners, including government, property owners, community groups, and lenders to develop strategies to help owners keep their properties in good condition and affordable. And the Compact is housed at Community Investment Corporation, or CIC, and you'll hear a little bit more about CIC in a second, but for those of you who aren't familiar, CIC is a CDFI lender that specializes in financing the acquisition and rehab of multifamily buildings. So CIC and the Compact have worked for many years alongside many partners, including the Cook County Assessor's Office, to help make this new program a reality. And so, like I said, I'm going to start by giving you a really quick overview of the program, and then our presenters from the Assessor's Office are going to go into a lot more detail in a few minutes. This is just to make sure that we're all starting from the same page. And so, here's how the program works. You need to do new construction or qualifying rehab to a multifamily rental property with 7 or more units, and you need to agree to hold a portion of your units affordable. And you can meet that affordability requirement in a number of ways. Your market rents might already be at the right level. You could rent to voucher holders, and there are a variety of other options. And in exchange, you can receive a predictable annual reduction in your assessed value. And if you complete annual certifications and comply with the program rules, you can receive the reduction for a 10-year term, and you can renew for 2 additional terms, so up to 30 years total. Right, and so some of you are probably thinking that this sounds really similar to the Cook County Class 9 program. And you're right. This program borrows many of the best parts of the Class 9 program, enhances them, and provides more options for property owners. So, and as you'll hear from the Assessor's Office team, current Class 9 participants can actually transition into this new program. So anyway, like I said, the Assessor's Office will dive into more details in a second, but first, I'm really excited to introduce you to Erica Miles, the Training and Technical Assistance Manager at Community Investment Corporation. Take it away, Erica.
Thank you, Emily. My name is Erica Miles, and I'm the Training and Technical Assistance Manager for CIC. Before I tell you about myself, I would like to share a little bit more about our organization. So CIC is a mission-driven lender that improves and preserves rental housing throughout the Chicago region. Our clients tend to be small, local owner-operators of quality, affordable rental housing. CIC has been active in the Chicago area since 1974, and we're looking forward to celebrating our 50th anniversary soon. We operate in the city of Chicago and 6 collar counties. We finance properties in virtually all Chicago community areas and over 80 suburban municipalities. In addition to providing financing, we provide policy leadership through the Preservation Compact, which Emily shared a little bit about with you. CIC also plays a community development role by intervening directly in distressed and vacant housing. This is done through TBI, or the Troubled Buildings Initiative. CIC specializes in the purchase and refinance of multifamily buildings with 5 or more residential units. Our borrowers tend to be from small family-owned businesses with a handful of units, all the way up to large and experienced developers with a few thousand units. We are willing to work with those who share our vision for vibrant communities. What makes CIC different? CIC is best known for our expertise in low, moderate income neighborhoods. We focus on unsubsidized, privately owned rental housing, or naturally occurring affordable housing. We receive our funding from banks, and we consider deals that mainstream banks wouldn't directly. And we're willing to use all tools at our disposal to make a deal work. We are very active on the south and west sides of Chicago. I am most excited to tell you about the Property Management Training Program. CIC offers workshops and training to help both current and aspiring owner-operators to grow and strengthen their businesses. Our 8-hour foundational course covers topics like maintenance, budgeting, fair housing, and eviction laws. And our workshops actually meet the industry standards for training certificate requirements for lenders such as NHS. We also offer single topic training sessions for more in-depth information on tips about things like how to choose a contractor or energy conservation. Our website offers a comprehensive library of property management resources and downloads, and you can find those at cicchicago.com. Finally, we partner with the City of Chicago to field property management inquiries like, what is the CRLTO, or Chicago Residential Landlord Tenant Ordinance? Or more importantly, how do I comply with the CRLTO? CIC has been offering property management training since 1998 and is celebrating our 25th year of PMT. Since that time, the program has trained over 26,000 individuals. CIC's training courses are the best in the industry. Yes, I said it. So this brings me back to my role. I was one of those small owner operators who benefited from CIC's amazing training resources. I found the property management training core course so useful that I took it multiple times over my 19 years of ownership just to stay up to date. I joined CIC just last week, and I'm so glad that they chose me to head up the program and follow in the path of the great Taft West and Jessica Civils. I'm happy to be here, and I look forward to working with you. Back to you, Emily.
Thank you so much, Erica. And so if folks have questions for Erica, please feel free to put them in the Q&A. And of course, we'll also share her contact information after the webinar. And so now we're going to dive into the details of the program and the application process. And just as another quick reminder, we will have time set aside for Q&A at the end of the webinar. So please feel free to put any questions you have about the program, the application process, or anything else into the Q&A. And with that, I'm really thrilled to hand you over to John McDonald, the Director of Multifamily at the Cook County Assessor's Office, and the wonderful Affordable Housing Special Assessment Program team. John, take it away.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you to the CIC and the Preservation Compact for hosting this today. Through the duration of the Affordable Housing Special Assessment Program, HB 2621, Stacy Young, Emily, and the rest of the Preservation Compact and the CIC have been incredible partners as we have navigated this new incentive for multifamily providers in Cook County. So none of this happened today without their help. And you know, we're really lucky in this office to have such good partners, not only on the government side, but on the private side as well. So a big thank you and kudos to them for all the great work that they do. Not only helping develop new affordable housing, but most importantly, you know, preserving the stocks that we have. And I think as many people know on this call, that that's been a real issue, is preserving the already existing affordable housing stock, the naturally occurring affordable housing providers, and trying to keep them basically to provide, you know, rents at 60% of AMI. And you know, you all are doing, not only you are small business owners, but you are doing this great work, and we are so grateful, and hopefully we're here to help accommodate you. I'm going to give you a very brief background of how we got here. After I do that and give you a couple bullets to think about, I'm going to turn you over to my colleague, Jerry Marconi, who is the director of legal for all of the exemptions. He oversees all of the exemptions, and then two other analysts, Jackie Brady and Anna Slonska, we are most lucky and grateful to have. They do excellent work. I know many of you are probably already familiar with them. I've heard them called recently the angels at the assessor's office with regard to the Affordable Housing Special Assessment Program, and I couldn't agree more. Anyway, just to give a little background, the roots of this program really started in 2009 when the Cook County Ordinance of Classification changed 1025. It used to be that multifamily class 3 properties were assessed at 16% of market value, and the old affordable housing incentive, which everyone knows class 9 would actually give you a break in a level of assessment. So it went from 16% to 10%. So you could see there was a very clear and discerning incentive there. After we changed, or after the classification changed by the county board voted on that. There was no longer any tangible benefit to class 9 as far as valuation went or level of assessment. Maybe you would get an assessment based on what your actual rents were, but class 9 really kind of lost its teeth. And I think at that point, Stacy Young, Allison Clements, a bunch of housing advocates really kind of sprung into action and worked for many years to get this new bill passed. And to reiterate what Emily had said earlier, these are the best aspects of class 9. At a couple of outreach events we've done recently, and actually right after this bill was passed in 2021, Assessor Kagi had said on numerous occasions, this is class 9 on rocket boosters, and truly it is. You can see a very tangible benefit from being in the program with either a 25% reduction in AV or a 35% reduction in AV in assessed value. So if you're applied to the program, you're compliant, contingent upon the amount of units that you have as affordable in the building. For a lot of you, you're naturally occurring affordable housing providers. Maybe all of your units are going to be, eligible for this. And I'm not going to get into the weeds with that, but the benefit is very tangible. It's 25%, 35%. On top of the fact is we take your property knowing that the rents are at 60% of AMI, and we assess that accordingly. So we don't look at you as a market rate parcel. We look at actually the affordability components of your building and use that as your base assessment. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say right now. I have a team. We have a team. We all work together that has done great work in this. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Jerry Marconi. I just, again, really want to say thank you once again to Emily and Stacy and everyone at this, Erica, and everyone at the CIC and the Preservation Compact for doing this. And we are always here to answer any of your questions that you have. We pride ourselves on getting back to people as soon as possible. So once again, thank you so much for participating, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.
Thank you, John. My name is Jerry Marconi. I'm an attorney with the Assessor's Office. So what I'm going to do is kind of give a brief overview of the law, explain some of the tiers, and then we're going to get more in depth later with regard to the application process, and then some other questions that all of you might have. As you all know, this is a state statute. It went into effect in 2022, the assessment year. And John touched upon class 9. I mean, class 9, in my opinion, is almost obsolete. The only thing the ordinance did as far as class 9 is gave you a lower level of assessment. And now that the class 3s are all 10%, there really isn't any teeth left at all in class 9. The only thing arguably is that, the property would be identified as an affordable property, so it may receive a more preferable valuation because valuations are going to take a look at the expenses. They're going to use a higher cap rate and generally are going to receive a lower valuation than a regular market rate property. So that being said, if a property gets into the affordable housing program, they will look at it as an affordable property and it will receive a more preferable valuation than it would that if it was a class 3. I think with regard to class 9, when we go through the tiers, it is a little bit easier to go from class 9 over into the special assessment program. But the problem with that is that anytime a property is in class 9, that time gets counted against those 3 10-year periods in the affordable housing program. So we have some properties that have been class 9 for 25, 26 years. I talked to a woman today. She's been in, I think, since 1988, making it virtually impossible to automatically transfer over. The other thing with regard to the transfer, it's really only applies to the rehab requirements, the new construction requirements. It doesn't relieve the owner from any of the other criteria within the statute. Still have to produce a rent roll and an inspection, and we're going to get into detail on some of that later on. So as far as the tiers are concerned, the way that we've done it is there's basically 3 tiers in the statute. Now, the first one we've called the 15% tier. It's a little confusing because that 15% tier is really a 25% reduction in the assessment. The reason we call it 15% tier is that's because 15 to 34% of the units within the building must be affordable as defined by the statute. If a building is 35 or more percent affordable, then it goes into this 35% tier, which then there's a 35% reduction in the assessed value of the property. Another tier within the statute is the low affordable community. We have not seen a lot of these. We have some of these. We get a lot of questions regarding this because the statute is not clear when it comes to what is the actual incentive, because that's based on the base year, which is the year prior to the construction. And we've been meeting with different developers and property owners when they have specific questions. And I know we'll talk about it later, and we're going to put our email in the slides, and we could put it in the chat. But we're always more than happy to speak with anyone that might have some unique questions regarding their property. We meet on a regular basis with developers who might have a question. Do I go in the 35% tier? Do I do in the low affordable tier? How are you going to figure out my base year? We don't have all the valuation. We can't answer all the valuation questions, but we can kind of provide some guidelines so that you, either as a developer or an owner, can kind of weigh the different tiers. As far as that 15% tier, it does give you a 25% reduction in the assessed value of the property. And again, if you are an affordable property, you're probably going to get a little more preferable valuation to begin with, based on the fact that you're affordable. With regard to this, there are certain thresholds, and this is where I think it's borrowed from class 9 in the statute, where if you're coming in as a new applicant, you have to show that there's this $8 a square foot improvement on at least 2 primary building systems. Later on, we can get into what a building system is, but it's clearly laid out in the statute, and it's kind of self-explanatory. The term of it, the way the statute is structured, is it calls it 3, 10, or 10. You have to commit for a period of 10 years, and then you can renew those periods 2 times. In this statute, there's not the similar requirement in class 9 where you have to submit a 10-year application and pay again and go through. I don't think you need to meet the expenditure requirements, but it is a little more involved, and there's an application process. This doesn't really talk about an application process. It's basically as long as you've been compliant with the program in those first 10 years, then you can renew for another 10. I'm not sure why they split it up into 3 10-year terms, but maybe it's because if someone wants to get out at year 10 and go to market rate, they can do so. Minimum building size, 7 units. We may get questions on that. That caused some confusion up front because of some of these IDA projects that might have multi-buildings, some of which might not have over 7 units, but I'm not going to get into this now. We can get into it later. Same with the 35% tier. It's very similar, but the investment threshold's a little higher. It's $12.50 a square foot. Same thing with the renewals. It's for 10 years, and then you can get 2 renewals. Building size is the same. The low affordable community, that gets a little more confusing in that it's a decreasing incentive. It also requires the owner to commit for a period of 30 years when they get into it. And once you get up to year 13, it goes down. Well, it starts out at 100%, the difference between the value prior to the year prior to construction and then the value after construction. So obviously, the highest incentive is going to be when you're basically building from land. When you have a land value, it's going to be a very low base year. You're going to have a very high incentive going at least for the first 13 years. And then it's going to decrease every fourth year. I believe it decreases. It goes from 100 to 80 to 60 to 40 to 20. I think some of the areas is, it's not throughout the whole city of Chicago. It's basically Zone D. I don't know if the city is designating certain areas of the city as being an affordable community. There's nothing that stops them from doing that. I'm just not sure if that's what's happening. So that's something generally we've been meeting with people individually when they have questions, because it's a lot easier to look at their parcel to see whether or not there's a building on it, to see what's, if that building is an abandoned building, is it falling down? Are they going to demo? What we're trying to do now is to create some type of incentive to, if they're going to demo a building, to try to put a land value on it as soon as we can, so that they don't have to sit on the land for a year before it gets a land value. Because you definitely want the land value when you're going into this type of incentive. I think what I'll do is I'm going to save some of the other things we're going to go through for the frequently asked questions. I am going to mention at this point, though, kind of the issues that we've had since this went into effect. We rolled it out, I want to say, last February, January, February, and as you would imagine, we got swamped with applications. Jackie and Anna weren't here. And to be honest with you, nobody incentives was processing the applications. It was being done by John and his policy team. So since then, we've built up the incentives department to add new analysts to concentrate on processing these. And thank goodness, I could say today we're completely up to date in it. Some of the issues we have faced, and maybe some of you, well, is with the DocuSign approach to it. You go online, everything is done through DocuSign. People get auto emails from DocuSign. You're being voided. Your application's expiring. There wasn't any way for us to communicate through DocuSign because it's a third party. And DocuSign might be great if you have to sign a lease or something like that. But then if you have to upload 200-300 pages of documents to supply us with the necessary information, it becomes very cumbersome. So what we have done is we have created a smart file application, which is going to allow somebody to go online, start the application. There's no longer going to be a part 1 and part 2. You're going to get a response email right away that you started it. And then it allows us to communicate better through Smart File with the applicant if they're missing anything, if they have any questions. And then as far as uploading, we're going to have several different data fields where, it'll say deed. You can upload your deed. You can upload your rent roll. You can upload your construction, proof of construction. You can upload your inspection. So hopefully it's going to be a lot easier. We pretty much have it completed, but we don't want to go live with it yet because of the fact it's, we're getting toward the end of the due date for these applications. And we feel right now it could possibly create confusion. So we decided to wait and then get it going, maybe test it a little bit in December, get it going early next year. So it should make the process even easier than it is now. And it allow the property owner, the applicant, to track what's going on And then a lot of it, you're going to get a lot of, automatic responses as far as what you're submitting, if we need anything more. And hopefully it's gonna help the system move quicker, in that if you submit an application, we can maybe turn it around in 2 weeks instead of 2 or 3 months. So if anyone has any questions about those, we're gonna, we can get into it. I think that Emily has some of the PDF copies of the current application, the part 1, part 2, which we can share later if there's questions about that. But I think right now, the most important thing is to open this up for questions. And then myself and Anna and Jackie are, we're here to answer questions. And we look at our role, we're the administrator of it, right? I mean, we didn't create the law. We're just trying to make it as user-friendly as possible and to provide a good customer service so that we can decide or determine whether or not somebody's in the program promptly, and then effectively communicate with the applicant so they know exactly where they stand during the process. So with that, maybe I'll turn it back to Emily or whatever, and we can open it up for questions.
Hey everyone, thank you so much, Jerry and John, for that detailed information. So I know Anna and Jackie put together their top 5 frequently asked questions to run through. So I'll hand it over to Anna and Jackie, and then we can dive right into audience Q&A. Anna and Jackie, take it away.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Slonska. I'm one of the incentive analysts here at the Assessor's office. So as Emily and Jerry said, we thought it would be a good idea to answer some of the frequently asked questions. So let me start. One of the questions that we get is when you should expect an email from us, whether your application was accepted or not, if there is anything else needed. We should respond to you within 2 weeks. Depends, of course, on the volume. So if you don't get a response from us, please email us at assessorsoffice.ahsap@cookcountyil.gov. When you get the email, you will receive either determination letter, and that letter will list in details what is missing. Maybe you are missing a deed, maybe you are missing your rent roll. You will have that specified in the letter. You have 30 days to respond and to provide us with missing information. If everything is okay, we have all the documentation, you will receive an acceptance letter. That is, again, specific letter will tell you when you were accepted to the program, how long you are in the program, how many times you are eligible for renewal. Jackie?
Hi, my name's Jackie Brady. I've worked with Anna in the incentives department and focusing mainly on affordable housing. So happy to answer any questions you guys have via the email address that was provided earlier and will be again throughout. Anna and I are also available to answer phone calls. So this is a new program and sometimes it's better to hash things out over the phone. So feel free to reach out. Another question that we get quite a bit is what type of documentation is required to confirm that the new construction or qualifying rehab has been completed with respect to the residential real property? Basically, what that means is what do you have to give us to show that you've done the work? Some examples include, but aren't limited to, a copy of a signed and dated building permit. So if you were to get a permit from the city of Chicago, for example, they often have inspectors come out and sign off on, when the plumbing is done or when the electric's done or when they're going to, seal it up. And those are helpful because they're signed on the back by the inspector and often dated, showing that the work's complete and is in compliance. Another item might be notarized contractors affidavits, so that it would show what work was done, what amount that work cost, and if it was paid out. Another item would be a final lien waiver, often notarized, that would be preferable, and certificate of occupancies are often provided when the work is done, and that is another proof of documentation that's helpful for us. Other items that people have submitted, and you'll see that on the application, are photographs, receipts. And while those are helpful and often tell a story of what was done, they don't necessarily include the property address or dates necessarily. So while they do help us show what work was done, and they often show us nice start and end photos, that lack of an address is difficult for us because obviously, we're processing upwards of 800 applications, and it's not possible for us to go out to each of these properties. So those are nice items to have to supplement your application, but these 4 items that I've laid out here have been kind of crucial and helpful for us to deciding if the property is meeting that item. Anna?
Another question that we often get is what documentation will be accepted as evidence that the property meets building codes? So far, we accepted the following documents: certificate of inspection from the municipality that the property meets building codes, certificate of occupancy from municipality upon completion of the renovation or construction. We will also accept a recent report from the licensed building inspector, who obviously inspects the property and determines that the property meets housing quality standards.
And just to piggyback on that last question, if the property is, let's say there's a Section 8 tenant in the building, oftentimes the CHA will come out and inspect the property and give that building a pass notice, or, say that it meets HSQ, which is our HQS, housing quality standards. Those documents are also helpful. We just are very keen on what date the document was written, to make sure that it was done after the renovation. So again, that's what emails, phone calls are for. If you have questions about what's acceptable, feel free to give us a call. But that was a good start. And now we can move on to the next question.
Well, I'm going to add to what Jackie just said. One of the problems that we've had for the last year is when you were in class 9, you could pick up the phone, call the city of Chicago. They would send somebody out, and then we would get a letter, or the owner would get a letter from the city of Chicago saying they passed an inspection. For the past year, I think the city has stopped doing that, and I don't think they plan on doing that anymore. So we've gotten a lot of issues where we've had people who are in class 9, who might have, are trying to get into this program, and they can't get an inspection from the city of Chicago. So what we've done is we've kind of created an inspection report as a sample that we've been telling people they can go and hire their own inspector, and then that inspector can go through the list that we have in this report that we've got posted to the website, and then sign off on it. We tried a lot with the city to see if we can, try to get them to be involved in the inspections, and they're not going to be involved. So unfortunately, it kind of throws it back on the applicant, the property owner, to hire a private inspector to come in and do an inspection. And I mean, people are doing it. And I think some of the larger providers, it's easier for them because they even have somebody kind of on staff, or they have a third party, a contractor that looks at all their buildings. But it's generally more of a problem for the smaller applicant who might have one, 10-unit building and trying to find somebody to come out and inspect them. But that's an issue that we've been facing for a while. And our only solution is to create this guide that an inspector can follow, and the applicant has to hire their own inspector.
And Jackie, I'm sorry.
So what are the rent and income limits for tenants? These figures are taken from IDA and they're published annually, typically around mid-April to early May. This year, they came out quite a bit later, early July. So it did take a bit to update our website, and that was because we were waiting on the figures from IDA. The highlighted numbers, Emily has created a nice slide here where we're just showing 60% of AMI rents for studio units all the way up to a 5-bed. And then below that, you'll see the tenant income maximums at 60% for a 1-person household up to a 6-person household. As you'll see, we're sticking to 60% of AMI. That's not to say that it can't be 50% of AMI, 40% of AMI. Obviously, there's lots of properties that have tenants whose incomes are less than that and rents that are less than that. But this is the high end of what is acceptable for this program. And all these figures are on our website, so easy to access. Again, any questions, feel free to reach out to us via email or phone, and we can get your questions answered.
Can the improvement have a commercial component and still be eligible? Otherwise, you can, if there is a coffee shop or a grocery store, yes, the property can include the commercial units. So the difference is if the commercial portion of the improvement is less than or equal to 35% of the gross building area, the entire building will get the incentive. If the commercial portion of the improvement is more than 35% of the gross building area, only the residential portion will get the incentive.
Okay, and we've included our direct email there. That email address is tied to 5 of us looking at it, if not on a daily, every other day basis. So someone will get back to you. If you send an email and you don't get a response within a few days, feel free to email again or reach out to some phone numbers that we'll provide if needed. Here the note says include a project name. That's not necessary if you are including a PIN. That's the most important. I know some of the smaller buildings don't necessarily have a project name, but that is helpful in some cases because people often refer to the larger developments with a specific project name. But the permanent index number is the most helpful thing to include in your subject line. That way, when we're communicating back and forth, we have, just a constant reminder of what particular property you're talking about. And hopefully it streamlines things for you and for us. So feel free to reach out with any questions, and I'll send it back to Emily and open it up for more questions.
Hi, everyone. So thank you, John, Jerry, Anna, and Jackie so much for the wonderful detailed information. And so we're going to move into the audience Q&A portion of the webinar. Some folks have already put their questions into the Q&A, but feel free to add additional questions there. So I will stop sharing my screen, and if all of the panelists could turn their cameras and audio or turn their cameras on. In addition to the wonderful folks from the Assessor's Office team, we also have Roz Meerdink, who is a Senior Loan Officer at Community Investment Corporation, who can help answer any questions about CIC. Okay, so maybe let's see. I'll get us started with this question that came in about the Affordable Housing Special Assessment application process. So on a very literal level, where can people find the application? Is there an application deadline? And for people who are approved, when will folks see the reduction on their property tax bill?
So
I'm not sure if, oh, go ahead, please.
The application can be found on our website. It's a link. It's very easy to fill out. It's very, very simple. Our deadline is September 30th. And you were asking about reduction. So you will see the reduction of the second installment of the
following year.
the next year. Yes. Next year bill.
So for folks who applied in the last year, they'll receive their reduction
A
on the second
reduction.
installment bill this year.
This year, exactly.
And we
Wonderful.
have that September 30th deadline, but we recognize for some people, the building may still be under construction. So it may not be put in service until November. So we're not going to not accept an application or not finish processing an application, September 30th. I mean, if there's extenuating circumstances, obviously, and the building's not done or it's not leased up yet, we're certainly going to consider that. And I'm sure we'll have some, late applications to process.
And to piggyback on that, a helpful thing for us, if you're thinking that your project is not going to be in service by the end of September, it'd be beneficial to at least submit part 1 so that we have some communication with you regarding your property. And that way, we get a file started and maybe it's done October 15th or November 15th, but we had that part 1 on file. So I think that we would put our best foot forward to get you in the program should the property be put in service before year end. So again, communication is key here, and we're always happy to chat.
And this is sort of building on that last question. Someone asked in the Q&A if you could share a little bit about what reports or compliance is needed every year and what that process looks like. Jackie, Anna, Jerry, or John.
Sure. So each year we're going to require an annual affidavit. We are rolling that out already for properties that were accepted into the program in 2022. It's an online document. It's 4 pages. It's very basic. And in addition to that, we are asking people to upload a copy of a current rent roll. And with that document, to include the income information for tenants occupying the affordable units. We're not looking for tenant income certifications to be submitted. There are some people that have hundreds of units just with one building, and that's cumbersome to send to us, but it is required that that be kept on file. So it's a fairly simple process. And if there are issues with the affidavit, you have questions with filling it out, feel free to reach out to us. But annually, there are no fees or anything else aside from the affidavit. And similar to the application, if there's something missing with the affidavit, we've been reaching out to people via email saying, we've received X, but we're missing Y. Please provide so that we can, mark you as compliant for 2023.
Wonderful, thank you. Let's see. So here's a great question. So one of the best things about this program is that there's a look back based on rehab work to rehab work done since January 1st, 2015. So if someone is applying based on previous work that has been done, are you eligible for tax relief for those back years, or is it just going forward?
So you can only, the program starts in 2022. So you really can't go before that, we're pretty much done with the 2022 tax year, although I was working on one where a woman applied as a class 9. She had over 30 years. And I found out today she spent $260,000. So that's a little different. We're going to allow her to amend her application, and there's a lot more to it because she was whatever, thanks to DocuSign. But we can't go before 2022 and 2020 unless there's really some extenuating circumstances. At this point, we'd have to do a certificate of error, and 2022 is kind of done.
And to be fair, it's when the application is submitted. If there was an error on our end and perhaps something got lost in DocuSign, or there were some, as Jerry mentioned, maybe they were applying in class 9 and meant to be in affordable, and there's some documentation to prove that. That's one thing. But in terms of looking back, we're kind of looking at when the application was filed. So at this point, we're starting 2023 and moving forward.
Perfect. And so here's a question about the affordability. I think John and other folks from the assessor's office, you did address this, but so do all of my units need to be affordable to participate or to be eligible for the reduction, or just a percentage?
No, as Jerry said before, you either need 15% of the units to be affordable or 35% of units to be affordable.
Wonderful. And then sort of a little bit along the same lines with these questions about affordability, are questions about what programs qualify as affordable for the purposes of this incentive. So of course, you can just either have market rents that are already at those 60% of AMI levels or lower your rents, but are things like vouchers or other income qualified programs through the city or the state or the Chicago Housing Authority, will those also count as affordable for the purposes of this program?
And I think that's something that we didn't talk about, but the statute does allow us to look at whether a property is participating in another income-based subsidy program, and it even gives us the right to not even have the person. We can look at it in lieu of an application. So what makes it really, really easy for us is if somebody is in an IDA program, HUD, any of these other income-based subsidy programs, we generally let them, we don't give it as much scrutiny. I mean, we look at it obviously and look at their rent rolls, but it allows us to almost kind of like a class 9, almost automatically put them into the program. If they're participating, whatever, in an IDA program, which has similar maximum rent limitations. So that's very important to get in to your application, is if you are in any of those programs, give us the stuff. If you have a contract rent that's a little higher than the IDA rents, sometimes you'll see that in a HUD contract or a HAP contract. We can accept the higher rent, but it has to be part of another program.
Wonderful. And I think, that's really great news for folks who maybe have housing choice voucher, Section 8 voucher tenants in their building, or have a contract with HUD or IDA or the CHA. So that's great news. So transitioning a little bit to thinking about the difference between this program and Class 9, for a sort of new construction affordable property or any kind of affordable property, is there any benefit to applying for Class 9, or should folks skip that and just apply directly to this program?
I don't know why you would apply for Class 9 anymore. I mean, if you meet the requirements as far as the expenditures in 9, then you're meeting them here. 9 is going to give you nothing. It really isn't. So, I mean, if you meet the requirements under 9, I don't know why you would apply, because it's the same. It's basically the same requirements here, but you're going to get either a 25% reduction in your assessed value or a 35%. And like I said before, Class 9 does not do anything with your assessed value, other than the level.
The only thing I would add to that is, let's say you've been in Class 9 for 27 years, 28 years. The affordable housing program, the way it's set up now, there is a 30-year period limitation. So maybe instead of applying for Class 9, you consider doing some rehab that might make you eligible for this program instead of the Class 9. You've been in Class 9 for 30 years, maybe you haven't done some work, and maybe this would be the impetus for you to go get that new roof or put in some energy efficient lighting or update your electrical. It is an expense up front here, but we think that 25% and 35% reduction in your AV might be worth it. And this might be, a good motivation to move over from 9 to the affordable housing program. And unfortunately, it might require some expenditures up front, but we think that the benefits are worth it.
Perfect. And so, John, again, I think you mentioned, John and Jerry, I think you both address this a little bit, but here's a question for you all. So when the post renovation value is assessed or determined, does that for a property in this program, does that valuation consider the lower affordable rents when calculating things like the NOI, applying the cap rate, et cetera, as you're valuing the property in the first?
Yeah, we do. Well, first of all, these are the office, and for the last 5 years now, does not consider these market rate properties. We look at these as affordable properties. The rents are restricted, whether or not they're tax credit properties, or even if they're just assessed as naturally occurring, at 60%, that is below market. And we adjust those rents according to what the rents are. Yes. We also bump up the expense ratios a percentage point, a few percentage point, and the cap rate is usually 1 to 2 basis points higher. And that's where you start from, Emily. So, oh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Sorry.
Right. That's the starting point. So that's your essentially your initial assessment, and then contingent upon your level of affordability at 60%, whether it's 15 to 34% or 35% or more, you would get that additional 25 or 35% reduced from that base value.
That's wonderful. That's really exciting. And so I actually have a question here for Roz at CAC. So, so how does this program, from like the perspective of a lender, someone who's underwriting loans, how does this program work with CIC's loan products or other loan products? Does it make a difference in the underwriting process? And then are there specific programs at CIC that can be used with this program?
Sure. Thank you, Emily. Yeah, so the program, when you're refinancing or going for a new purchase and we do our regular underwriting, any savings to your expenses, including savings through this program, are better for your loan. So for example, because rates are rising, we're having to restrict loan amounts. So typically you might get an 80% loan, but lately we've been giving lower loans because they're restricted, because we want to make sure that borrowers can pay all of their expenses and all of their debt payments at the end of each month. So any reduction in those expenses is going to allow you a little bit more room on your first mortgage. So at CIC, we're allowed to underwrite with this program in mind, because we're confident that when the buildings are eligible, that they'll make it through that system. Yeah, so we are currently underwriting projects with this savings. It's rather simple. I wouldn't even call it layering with other programs because it's really no different. You can apply with or without. It layers, I guess, with other CIC products, all CIC products, TIF grants or other funding sources that you might add on the property. And additionally, the affordability requirement is quite similar to some of our other programs. So it's kind of like you're getting a 2-for-1. You're putting away that affordability, but you're benefiting from both programs. So that applies to our TIF grants. It also applies to our MEZ program, which is kind of a second mortgage program, which allows you to go higher loan to value. So overall, it's very simple. And it's very easy as lenders for us to include this in our underwriting, and it will, like I said, every dollar saved on expenses is going to improve your deal. So please give us a call.
Perfect. And one thing that's come up in the chat a couple of times, or in the Q&A a couple of times, is if you all could confirm the application deadline for this year just one more time. When should folks be sure to have their, if they're hoping to see this reduction on their second installment tax bill next year, when should they do their best to get their application in?
As soon as possible.
September 30th is our deadline, but as soon as
Tomorrow.
possible, yes.
Just get something in and we'll start to work with you.
Perfect. And so, we are at 3 minutes to the hour. Again, I know we weren't able to get to all of the questions in the Q&A. We will do our best to try and get answers for you. And again, I do want to remind you that we will share out the email for the assessor's office team that deals with this program. So if you have specific detailed questions about your property or your application, they're a great resource to reach out to. And so I'm just going to talk a little bit about next steps. Let me see if I can reshare my screen. Okay. So, just as some quick reminders, this presentation was recorded, and slides linked to the webinar recording and additional resources, including our emails and the email address for this program, will be shared out after the webinar. And again, there are links to the Affordable Housing Special Assessment Program application and other resources in the Q&A. If you have questions about your application, you can email assessor.assap@cookcountyil.gov. That is also on the Cook County Assessor's Office's website for this program, as well as the phone number to reach out to the folks that you've seen. And of course, if you have other questions about this event, about the recording, or about this program more generally, feel free to reach out to me anytime at emily.bloomcarlin@cicchicago.com. And again, panelists, if you could turn on your cameras, just thank you again so much for participating in this program. We do have more information coming soon, and this is the first in a series of webinars. As things change in this program, we hope to have additional webinars and answer more questions. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a great day.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
Thank you.